Assalamu alaikum. This is Abdul Mannan, Assistant Teacher, Bangladesh and Global Studies, Shamsul Haq Khan School and College, English version. Today, I will discuss English parliamentary debate and on today's topic, today's motion, consciousness is the only way to remove the contamination of COVID-19 coronavirus. This is our today's motion. Dear students, for your better understanding, I have included in here some rules of English parliamentary debate. So, we read carefully these rules and try to understand about English parliamentary debate. Rules number 5, 6, 7 and 8, most important for English parliamentary debate, especially those who are newcomer in our debate club. These rules is most important for them. So new students, you will read carefully these rules and try to understand. Rules number 9 is most important rule. The rules on point of information. You know, in the English parliamentary debate, there are 3 points. Number 1, point of order. Number 2, point of information. And number 3, point of privilege. The rules on point of information. These points are most important for winning debate. And rules number 10, 11, you see, and rules number 12, 13, 14 and 15. You read carefully and try to understand these rules for your better understanding and for your better performance. Debating structure is most important. All of the student is most important for you. Debating structure. And your activities also in here. See carefully. Debating structure. But debating phrase is not important now. Debating structure is important. Okay. Now come to the point. Today's motion. You know, our today's motion is consciousness is the only way to remove the contamination of COVID-19 coronavirus. Students, you know, in the English parliamentary debate, there are 2 teams. Proposition team, government team and opposition team. Proposition team, 3 members. First one, Prime Minister. Second, Concerned Minister, Health Minister, because today's motion is related with the health. So, Health Minister. And 3, Member of the Treasury Bench. And opposition team, there are also 3 members, Leader of the Opposition, Deputy Leader of the Opposition, and Member of the Opposition. Okay, now Prime Minister's speech. Prime Minister, at first, he will define the motion. Today's motion is consciousness is the only way to remove the contamination of coronavirus. The Prime Minister is the position team, so he will define the motion, what is consciousness and what is only way and what to remove contamination coronavirus. He will define this word, this motion. Then he will mention his timeline, his timeline, and he will give his own arguments. Prime Minister's speech, Prime Minister can follow the following points. Number 1, opposite relation between consciousness and COVID-19. There is an opposite relation, consciousness and COVID-19. If you are conscious, then you will save from the COVID-19. If you are unconscious, then you cannot save from the COVID-19. Like this, you can explain this point, the consciousness and COVID-19, what is the opposite relation. And number 2 point, role of conscious person, family, society, authority. The conscious person, family and society and authority's role. If a person or family, society and authority conscious, then he will can save from other person, other family and society. So this is most important for this motion, and this is most important to remove the contamination of coronavirus, and you will define this role. And number third point, absence of effective vaccine, consciousness is the only way. We know till now there is no effective vaccine in the world of coronavirus, so consciousness is the only way. To take this point, you will explain and you will define your position. This is the Prime Minister's speech. Prime Minister can speak to take this point. And number two, concerned minister. Concerned minister at first rebuttal the leader of the opposition, because before speaker of concerned minister is the leader of the opposition. So concerned minister rebuttal the speech of leader of the opposition first, then he will give his arguments, his speech, and he can follow this point. He can explain speech of WHO, UNICEF, UNO about consciousness to remove the contamination of COVID-19. These three organizations emphasize of consciousness to remove the contamination of COVID-19. He can mention their speech, their recommendation. And number two, doctor and specialist recommendations. Concerned minister can can describe the doctor and specialist recommendation of rest of the world. And this is important in here, especially consciousness. And most reported doctor and specialist emphasis on consciousness to remove the contamination of coronavirus. He can describe and he can mention in here the doctor and specialist recommendations. And number three, abide by the rules of lockdown and home quarantine. Lockdown and home quarantine also the part of consciousness. So he can focus in here, abide by the rules of lockdown and home quarantine, and maintain the lockdown also. And after completing his speech, he can summarize like this way: from the above arguments, we can demand, our demand is this proposal can pass in the House, in the Parliament, and government can take affirmative action, affirmative steps in favor of this proposal. Then, member of the Treasury bench of the proposition team, I mean government team, member of the Treasury bench at first rebuttal of the deputy leader of the opposition, because before speaker is the deputy leader of the opposition, so he will rebuttal the speech of the deputy leader of the opposition at first. Then he provide his arguments, his explanation, but he can follow this point. Point number one, importance of consciousness to remove the contamination of COVID-19. He can mention and he can focus this point, importance of consciousness to remove the contamination of COVID-19. Without consciousness, it's not possible to save from the contamination of COVID-19. He can focus strongly, take position in favor of this motion, especially consciousness. Then point number two, explain the some conscious countries like Middle East, China, Japan, Thailand. He can give example of this country because this country can control the COVID-19 spread, and in their country some people affected, and for the consciousness they can control the COVID-19, and member of the Treasury bench can mention and can give example these countries. Example of some unconscious countries like Italy, USA, France, Spain. Actually, at first they were unconscious. For this reason, the COVID-19 coronavirus were spread in their country, and more people were affected by the COVID-19. So as a Treasury bench, he can mention this country and the reason of the unconsciousness in this country the coronavirus was spread. After completing his speech, he can summarize and he will give demand that this, from the above argument, our demand is this proposal can pass in the House and government can take steps in favor of this proposal. Like this way, he will finish his speech. Then opposition team. Opposition team, there are 3 members: leader of the opposition, deputy leader of the opposition, member of the opposition, Speech of leader of the opposition. Leader of the opposition at first, after completing his opening speech, he will deliver and he will mention his standpoint. I have given a standpoint. You can give another standpoint, no problem. I have given a standpoint. Strengthen immune power of human body is the way to remove the contamination of COVID-19. Because your opposition team will deliver the consciousness is the only way to remove the contamination of COVID-19. But you have to say another point. So you will deliver in your speech. Consciousness is not the only point, but also strengthen human power, strengthen immune power of human body is the way to remove the contamination of COVID-19. Then define the motion. You can accept the Prime Minister definition of this motion, or if you are not accept, then you redefine the motion in favor of your standpoint. When you redefine your motion, then you will define in favor of your standpoint. Then you will mention your team line. Your first position is speech, and your second position, main team line, you will mention. Then rebuttal Prime Minister, then own arguments, because you will come in the dais after Prime Minister's speech, so you rebuttal Prime Minister's speech. Then you will deliver your own arguments. So you can take this point to deliver your speech. Number 1, to remove the contamination of COVID-19 is not possible by only consciousness. You can focus on this point. By the only consciousness, it's not possible to remove the contamination of COVID-19, because we are the developing countries, and if we under lockdown and home quarantine, our economy does to day by day, and it's not possible for developing country. Not only developing country, but also developed country is not possible. So consciousness is not only way to remove the contamination of coronavirus, but also the strengthened immune power of human body is the permanent way to remove the contamination of coronavirus. Because those who are immune power is strong, then he will remove and he will recover the coronavirus affection, because the coronavirus is the respiratory syndrome, respiratory disease. So immune power is the most important to remove the contamination of coronavirus. And the third point, absence of vaccination. Immune power of human body is the only way. In the world there is no effective vaccine of coronavirus. So immune power of human body is the only way to remove or from save the contamination of coronavirus. You will focus on this point of your speech. Then after completing your speech, you will say like this. So we can say that from our argument, this motion cannot pass in the House, and this is not logical. The only consciousness is the only way to remove the contamination of coronavirus. But also we can say that the extinct immune power of human body is the way to remove the contamination of COVID-19. Then second speaker, deputy leader of the opposition. Deputy leader of the opposition at first rebuttal the concerned minister, because he will come after concerned minister's speech. So he will rebuttal the concerned minister, then rebuild own case, then own arguments. And deputy leader of the opposition can take this point to focus and to explain his speech. Number one, how immune power can save a person from the contamination of COVID-19, because their standpoint is strengthen immune power of human body. So he will explain how immune power can save a person from the contamination of COVID-19. And number two, what should we do to strengthen immune power of human body? Actually, we have to take hygiene, food, exercise, and good environment, ensure the good environment, and it will help to extend the immune power of human body. He will explain like this way. And number three, recommendation of doctor and specialist about extending immune power of human body from save the contamination of COVID-19. Rest of the world, not only Bangladesh, more doctor and specialist person, they emphasize to extend immune power of human body, because those who are immune power of human body is strong, they can save from the contamination of COVID-19. So he will explain to take this point. After completing his speech, he will demand in the House. From the above argument, we can say this proposal cannot pass in the House, and it's not logical, and government cannot take steps in favor of this proposal. And number three, member of the opposition. Member of the opposition, he will rebuttal of third position speaker, member of the treasury bench of position, because he will come after third position speaker, yes, and he will give own arguments, but he can give his arguments, he can focus to take this point, following point. Number 1 point, importance of immune power of human body to remove the contamination of COVID-19. He can focus this point, importance of immune power of human body to remove the contamination of COVID-19. Or the importance of immune power of human body, he will explain. Then speech of WHO, UN about immune power of human body. WHO, World Health Organization, and United Nations also emphasize to extend immune power of human body from the save of coronavirus. So he can focus and he can describe in here WHO speech and UN speech. Then next point, permanent solution of COVID-19 and immune power of human body. He can focus on this point, permanent solution of COVID-19 and immune power of human body. There is a relation between the permanent solution of COVID-19 and immune power of human body, because without this, it's not possible to remove or to save from the contamination of COVID-19. Long time lockdown and the home quarantine, it's not permanent solution. So permanent solution is, he will focus strengthen immune power of human body. It's a permanent solution. We have to take a step to extend immune power of human body. If our immune power is strong, then we will save from the contamination of COVID-19, and we can remove contamination of COVID-19. And there is no alternative way to extend immune power of human body. He can explain and he can focus on this point. After completing his speech, his explanation, he will demand in the House. From the above argument, we can say this proposal cannot pass in the House because it is not logical, and government cannot take a step in favor of this proposal. Then rebuttal session, position reply speech. Prime Minister will give this speech. Prime Minister at first summarize, not first, second and third speaker speech, his team. Second and third speaker speech, because he is the first speaker. And then he will take a strong position in favor of his team speech and in favor of his speech and the motion, because they are the position, they are the government side, and the completing his speech, his arguments, he will he will strongly demand in the House that this motion, this proposal can pass in the House, and this is logical. Without consciousness, it's not possible to remove the contamination of coronavirus. Only consciousness is the way till now. He will take strong position in the House in favor of this speech and in favor of this motion. Then opposition replies speech. Leader of the opposition will deliver this speech. At first, he will refute the Prime Minister arguments. Then he will summarize second and third speaker's speech of his team. He will summarize his team second and third speaker's speech. Then he will give arguments in favor of his opinion, in favor of his standpoint. Then take a strong position in favor his team speech, and opposed of the motion, strongly opposed. He will strongly oppose of this motion, and he will demand in the House that it's not possible and it cannot pass in the House because this motion, this proposal is not logical. So from our side, our demand is this proposal cannot pass in the House. The consciousness is not only the way to remove the contamination of coronavirus, but also the extension of immune power of human body is the only way to remove the contamination of coronavirus. Like this way, he will finish his speech. Okay, it's all for today. Thank you all.